Trista Bites here, welcome in, have a cup of tea. With events starting to open up here in the UK again, I've been asked about what kit I use to make videos at Comic Cons and Gaming Expos. Now I've been making videos for over 6 years now, so the way I worked has changed and evolved over time. I've tried a few things which did and didn't work for me, so hopefully I can share some tips and tricks from my experience which will help you guys out. Of course, everyone has their own experiences and preferences on kit, so this is just based on my own experiences, so I will try and include some alternatives and general information as where I can. Also, today's video is sponsored by Lexar Play high capacity fast transfer SD cards, but we'll talk about that a bit more later. First thing you're going to need is a camera. I'm on my third camera since I started creating content. I started off on a Canon 600D, upgraded to a 700D, and now I am on the Canon M50. Slight theme there, I know. Now the 600D and the 700D are still decent entry-level DSLR cameras. The 600D especially is available fairly cheap online. I think I saw it for about 150 quid including a lens, and the 700D is about 250 including a lens. I upgraded from one to the other because the 700D handles lower light or changeable light situations a bit better. It also has a touch screen which makes things much easier when you've got a screen out pointing at yourself for vlogging to be able to change things without having to turn the camera around, and also it has the live face tracking, so if you're filming yourself and you don't have somebody else helping you, perhaps be the other side of a tripod, it can make a lot of difference there so that you don't film loads of footage, get home and realise it's just ever so slightly out of focus. So both of these cameras are still a decent DSLR budget option. You still see people making content with those at Comic Cons. If you're filming in a set location or have somebody to help you with your filming, you could absolutely make brilliant content with an older DSLR camera such as the 600 or 700D. In fact, if you have a good phone and not a potato, as my phone basically is, you may find that the camera on your phone is good enough for you to start off with that. So investigate your options and see if you can start off with a phone to begin with, especially since you can put really like enormous capacity SD cards into phones nowadays. You could possibly shoot everything you needed to on your phone, so consider that option if it's something that you already own. I'm useless with my phones, I often drop them, I generally can't be trusted with nice ones, so I generally keep my camera and my phone quite separate and get quite cheap phones. However, even though I do drop my phones, because I'm now streaming on Twitch, I love the idea of streaming from events, and that would be much easier from a phone, so I might need to look into getting a decent one. And speaking of dropping things, there's the matter of my 700D. So the reason I upgraded from the 700D was because my last one lost a fight with gravity? Yeah, I might have been filming myself with a lightsaber on a mountain in Scotland as you do, and dropped the camera and broke it and didn't even make the video the footage was for. 'Cause I'm an idiot. And although my 700D still worked, it developed an intermittent error where it would occasionally turn off if it was left running for too long filming, and for me who's often away from the camera doing interviews, or I'm on stage at events and I'm not attending the camera, I just can't have anything that has even the slightest possibility of having a fault, so I had to look at upgrading. So I wanted something that I could use that would be reliable both for filming and for streaming. So I went for the Canon M50. It's something that works pretty well for both of those things. Also, it meant that I could continue to use all of the lenses that I owned by using a converter on this camera, and that just made it much simpler for me to move from the one to the other. There are loads of videos you can find on YouTube about loads of other perfectly good cameras that work for these things. However, I know Canon well now. I like the fact they have the full swivel screens rather than the screens that just go up onto the top like some of the Sonys, although they have beautiful pictures. I just find that a little bit irritating because I like to use the hot shoe mount on top of my camera to put things like lights, mics and other stuff like that, and the flip up screen just makes it kind of impossible to do both of those things. The only thing I will say is that there's two versions of the M50, so if you want to be streaming as well as using it for video on location, the second version of the camera has slightly better face tracking, multi-point tracking. It also has clean HDMI out. That's only relevant though if you're streaming with it and you're using a cam link to use the HDMI out of the camera. You can still use those things with the M50, however you have to turn off a couple of things on the screen, including the auto face tracking. It's not the end of the world, it's just something to bear in mind if streaming's your main thing and video events is secondary for you. The M50 is also a mirrorless camera, so it is significantly smaller in every dimension than my existing one. This does have a double battery pack on it, which is something I don't know if they make for this yet, but is super useful. But this thing is hench. It weighs about twice as much, and yeah, weight is a big concern for me when I'm carrying my kit around events. Also, it means I can use smaller tripods and supports and just have to worry a little bit less about it, because there's just a lot less of it, basically. So the M50 is where I am at now. However, if the 700D hadn't lost a battle with gravity, I probably wouldn't have upgraded it for some time to come. And also do remember that if you are streaming, Canon made an EOS software for using these cameras as webcams, so there's loads of the older DSLRs you can use as webcams over USB now, so that's an option as well if you want to start out doing these things and you don't want to invest quite as much money. Because I've been doing this for 6.5 years, and I needed to get a new camera, it made sense for me to get a slightly more modern camera that had a few more benefits for me, but I absolutely wouldn't have upgraded that unless I hadn't dropped... If I had... Look, I dropped the other one, alright? It happens. To be fair, I got it secondhand and it lasted me for, 6 odd years before I did that, so, I personally think I did well. Mic-wise, on location, although I did used to use this for streaming as well, although it isn't really ideal for that, I have the Zoom H1. This is an old version of the Zoom H1. I bought this one years ago and it cost me about 40 quid on eBay. They're pretty cheap, however, they are rock solid. It has survived me all of this time. It's basically a small recorder that takes SD cards and you can record to it. It also functions secondarily as its own microphone. It isn't the best mic in the world, however, it is a very good way to start out. Now, I use this because the preamps inside DSLR cameras, they're pants. Unless you buy a really, really expensive camera, that's the technical term for it. Absolutely pants sound is what you're going to get, and it doesn't really matter what kind of expensive microphone you plug into the top of a DSLR camera, the sound you're going to get is still going to be really mediocre and noisy as well. So especially if you are going to be standing away from the subjects you are talking to, the camera's going to be in the distance and things, that can just make really, really messy audio that requires a lot of work to clean up and just always sounds a little bit kind of amateur. But if you're vlogging, that might not matter. The camera's much closer to your face, or if you're recording in quiet areas, you may well be fine to use one of the Rode shotgun mics you've probably seen absolutely everybody at Comic Con using. It just depends on what you're using it for. Because I'm often interviewing or I'm on stage, I'm pretty much necessarily always a bit too far away from the camera. Having something like this and then just syncing the sound up later, which is why we do that clapping at the beginning of shots, or what a clapperboard is for, in fact, you can then get much, much cleaner audio with the microphone much closer to the source. And to add to this, so the next upgrade I added to that is getting the Rode Reporter mic, and this then plugs into, by a cable, into the Zoom H1. That goes in the back of the pocket. You then have the advantages of having Rode mic quality, plus the portability of the Zoom H1, and syncing that up to the audio. It sounds like quite a complicated way to do it, but for interviews where I found that people often spoke quite quietly in very noisy environments at Comic-Cons, it made my life so much easier, and it just meant I never had a situation where a shy or quieter speaking person just basically was inaudible on the final recording. When it comes to additional lighting, it's not essential, especially if you're somewhere that's already very well lit. However, if you can get one, I recommend picking up a little LED light. They often go onto the top of the camera. Again, the reason why I prefer that swivel screen on the M50 is because of this, and that just means that you could shine a little bit more additional light onto the subject, or just basically make sure you don't have too many harsh shadows on your face. You could use a ring light if you had a setup with a stand and somebody to help you. However, this is just kind of a good halfway house. They do tend to eat batteries. You can get some that come with rechargeable batteries, but yeah, definitely just have piles of batteries, one of these, and remember to turn it off between take. And speaking of batteries, when you're filming anywhere, batteries are one of the main things that you want to take with you. I do often recommend people have the AA rechargeable batteries for things like your recorders, for your lights, and for any other general bits of equipment you have. However, you can't always get anywhere to recharge those, and they do start to wear out as they get older. So I do recommend people take a couple of packets of once-use batteries as well, just for emergencies. Just don't get ones from your local pound shop or equivalent. They don't last as long, they're definitely a false economy, and nothing makes the shots more difficult to film than having to constantly stop and change batteries. Plus for me, the Rode mic also uses phantom power. Off the Zoom H1, that drains the power even quicker. The lights like to eat the batteries. There are always things that require batteries, so just always have a reasonable stock of those on you. Make sure if they're rechargeable AA batteries or AAA batteries that you have charged them up and checked them all the night before as well, because there's nothing more annoying than carrying around a bag of batteries that don't even work. Similar to your AA and AAA batteries, your camera batteries. Do not get the cheapest ones of those, the unbranded ones you can get on certain online auction sites. They almost always don't last extremely long amount of time and are not quite as high capacity as they make out. And whatever batteries you get, if you get a mix of high quality ones and cheaper emergency ones, here's something I recommend everyone to do and never ever do myself, and that's get a silver Sharpie or similar and write the date of when you purchased the battery on the battery. Now that's because all of these batteries, they run out over time, and knowing whether or not you're picking up a battery that you've owned for 1 year or 7 years is going to tell you whether or not you've picked up the good reliable battery or the one you probably need to think about replacing later. Because again, nothing more irritating than starting an incredible interview or an incredible long walking shot and having to change the battery multiple times because you're using the ones that just happen to just got basically dying of old age. Again, I never do this because I am an idiot. It's a top tip though. I also always tell people bring your charger, bring USB cables, bring anything else you can, USB charging banks, any source of power that you can bring with you. Bring that with you because you never know, you may find a plug socket you can use, you may find one of those pay to charge phone stations that you could also plug into a USB powered camera charger or a battery recharger of some sort. So just bring a few options with yourself just in case there are places you can recharge as well. So that's half your bag now full of cables and chargers and batteries. And of course, if you're filming all day, whether it be on your phone, your camera, or if you just want to go and watch a film, take a break, play some games or something to get away from the noise of the event, you're going to be relying on SD cards, and lots of them. And just like with the batteries, I very much recommend do not get unbranded ones. You will find they're not actually as fast as they say. You don't want ones that are going to have errors, you don't want ones that aren't actually class 10, or that don't have the speeds that you need for them. And speaking of high quality SD cards, that's the most natural and seamless segue we're going to get for today's sponsor, Lexar. Because the Lexar Play is optimised for things like the Nintendo Switch, if you do need a few minutes of peace or a break from a heavy filming schedule, you can sneak outside with 1 terabyte worth of games on your Switch and have a little bit of peace and quiet in the land of Animal Crossing. So these beautiful bright red Lexar Play SD cards are compatible with portable gaming devices, smartphones and tablets. If you need large capacity class 10 high speed to store all of your files, videos and games in a neat little package, then these are very, very much up for the job. They have fast transfer speeds for quick loading times of up to 150 megabytes per second. They store more videos, movies, games and music and your favourite content with a large capacity of up to 1 terabyte. They quickly capture, playback and transfer 1080p full HD video, and they can load apps faster with A1 or A2 rated performance depending on which capacity of SD card you've picked. And they're just quite beautiful to look at. Ooh. So now we've got all the data storage covered, it's time to talk about things like tripods. I have a fairly small lightweight tripod that I quite like using. However, if you're going to be behind the camera rather than in front of it, or you have a friend to help you out, monopods are another really convenient thing you can use, and they're allowed even in venues that don't like you having tripods. Either way, go for something that's as small as light as you can. Doesn't need to be the most expensive thing in the world. Just bear in mind, if they fold down smaller and they're not as heavy, then that's just going to make your life much easier in the long run. I also have this here Joby Gorillapod, and this is hench. This is a hench expensive bad boy. It is very different to the ones that you get that are quite cheap. It's completely made of metal joints. It's like something out of a sci-fi film. It's really useful for tying it to a tree if it's an outside venue, or putting it on a table in order to film us if we're sitting down having a conversation. You can also use it as a stabilizer, or you can bend it up and use it effectively as a little makeshift rig. Anything to make your shots a little bit more stable. Now, obviously, it's not as good as using a proper rig or one of those super image stabilizing gimbals you've seen out there, but it's a lot steadier than holding the camera with your hand, and it's kind of multi-use and lets you look like you're being attacked by some kind of cyberpunk squid, so that's definitely a look. So, as you've probably spotted, my kit has evolved and is still evolving a lot over time as well. I recommend if it's your first time making content at an event, that if possible you see you can borrow some equipment, some of your friends, also practice doing some filming at home before you go to the event and just familiarise yourself with what you're working with. Otherwise, just do as much research as you can into thinking about what you want to film and what the best and sometimes cheapest way to achieve that can be. Because you obviously don't need all the kit that someone who's doing a completely different content type to you does. Also, have a think for your first videos. Do you want to be in front of the camera or behind it? And even if you're in front of the camera, do you want to be doing vlogging? Do you want to be doing live sound? Or do you want to do a voiceover later? Maybe you don't even need to be capturing a lot of sound at the event, apart from some ambient background noise, and you can just go home and use a USB mic and record a clean voiceover based on some notes you've made at the time, and then put that audio over the top in editing. Like, there really are ways to start off with a very basic amount of kit, and then just add more things as you realise you need them as you go to more and more events. The things I thought I was going to film at events aren't actually the sort of thing I ended up filming at all. I bought a fair amount of kit, including shotgun microphones, including more heavy kind of tripods and things that I ended up selling and replacing with smaller, lighter kit and things that I use for a million different things that aren't necessarily their intended purpose, and I just kind of let it evolve over time. Another thing I would highly recommend is trying to team up with other people. I've got some great videos by teaming up with somebody else who wants to film and who doesn't want to be in front of the camera but wants a presenter, and I will do videos for them, and then we'll take their SD card out of their very nice, fancier than my camera, put my SD card in, we'll then do some shots for me, and we just share the footage between us. And that's quite a good way of getting shots you can't do on your own and just teaming up with other people in the community. One of the other things I try and do is make sure as much as my kit as possible fits into a single bag. You can tie your tripod to the front of this one. It's got a few different pockets and a main section inside here. However, I don't recommend this bag. It's yeah, it cuts into my shoulder, it squeaks horribly. However, I refuse to stop using it until it absolutely breaks, because that's just the way I roll. I recommend getting a backpack. Those are much more sensible. They have those dividey sections inside. They're much better for your back and shoulders. They're more secure, and they don't squeak all the time, because I basically sound like I'm trying to kidnap a family of mice when I walk around with these things. Although that could just be my shoulder. Who knows? I do, however, utilise its pockets to put all of the unused batteries, be they for the camera or the AA batteries for the mic and things, into one pocket, and all of the used batteries that need recharging or disposing of into the other pocket. So, top tip there. Apart from all the batteries, SD cards, cables, and everything else I have suggested so far, there are a few other bits and pieces that I would highly suggest you take along with you if you can. Business cards, be that just scraps of paper that you've written your Twitter handle on, or that's one card that you have made that's very nice that you let people take a photograph of, that works quite well, or an entire box of ones that you take out and hand out to people. It's a good way of letting the people you've filmed know where the footage is going, and just making friends and staying in touch with people. I also recommend taking a notebook and making plans and taking notes throughout the event. Trust me, you are going to want to film everything, but you're going to need to make some kind of plan if you don't want to just end up with 700 shots of things not actually knowing what to do with them. If you know you want to make a cosplay video and a vlog, and then you're doing a few interviews, you can plan some shots in advance, you can take some notes and know roughly what you need. If you're going to be filming a vlog on each day, you can make a note of the things you've mentioned in that vlog, and then you can keep an eye out for the B-roll footage that you need to shoot on subsequent days. If you happen to mention a particular area, or a particular type of cosplay, or a stall, you then know from your notes that you need to go and take a few shots of that, because it will add a lot to your vlog video. You won't remember these things. There's just so much going on at Comic Con and Gaming Expos, so trust me, you're gonna want these notes. Later you who's editing this stuff is gonna thank you. Other things I'd recommend are things like cable ties and electrical tape and hair bands and elasticated clips. These things are all incredibly useful, and things like hair bands I think is one that gets missed. They're really handy if you want to be able to kind of bungee things together, but you don't want to have to cut the things apart to remove them, either because it's not your kit or it's breakable, or because it's a venue that will take even small pairs of scissors off you. So that's a good non-destructive way of just stabilizing things, attaching things to each other, or just getting your own hair out of your face if that's an issue too. Multi-use. Also, snacks. I always hide a few snacks in my bag. I usually use nut and fruit-based bars. It sounds like it's not part of your technical kit, but trust me, your brain will fail if you don't have some kind of protein and food source in you. So sneaking a couple of little snack bars into your kit bag, you will definitely appreciate when you find them later. And another one I'm going to suggest is that if you know you are making 3 different types of videos during the event, you're going to be making a vlog, you're going to be making a bunch of cosplay highlight and interview videos, you're also going to be videoing some of the things on stage happening at the events, I would recommend, if possible, using different SD cards for that. Now, you might not always have time to change out SD cards, you're going to want to shoot those really interesting moments that happen out of nowhere. However, if you have most of the shots for your cosplay videos all on one card, most of the shots for the interviews on another, and all of the things pertaining to your blog on another one, it's going to make your job so much easier in future. Trust me, as somebody who has a folder of literally about 500 video clips from their last Japan trip that just says Japanese videos to sort, yeah. Do it, it'll make your life so much easier. Editing you will love you if you have sorted the footage as much as humanly possible as you were going along. Hopefully these tips have helped you out and given you a little bit of an insight into how I make my videos and how I try and make them look sometimes a little bit more high quality than they actually are based on how much I've spent on things. So let me know what you think of those, if it's helpful. Also, if you have any top tips yourself, if you've managed to bungee cord and jury wig some really interesting things together, then please let me know your tips as well. I'm always looking out for new things I can use. Thank you again for watching, you guys are awesome. And thank you again to Lexar for sponsoring the video with their Snazzy Play SD cards. Thanks again, guys. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, all of that nonsense, and I will see you again next time. Bye!